Planning on visiting Yellowstone National Park and you need to know those top tips in order to make the most of your trip? I've got you covered. Hey there, I'm Alex from Alex on the Map, and I visited Yellowstone a lot after growing up in Montana. My dad would often drag me on road trips there when I was a teenager, and of course I was so over it. But obviously now I love our national parks and I have a great appreciation for all that Yellowstone has to offer. Because it is such a busy park, it does require a bit more planning than maybe some of the other parks with fewer visitors. I'm going to share some tips I've found personally useful when going to Yellowstone on my own, and also some tips that my clients have shared with me when I plan their custom national park itineraries. One thing I will say, if you are planning on getting off the beaten path in Yellowstone, make sure you have your bear spray ready to go with you and you know how to use it. Alright, let's dive into the first tip. My first recommendation would be to book your trip at least 5 months in advance. Things book up near Yellowstone so quickly just because there are so many people who plan on visiting. Accommodations within the park usually book up at least a year in advance. And for most parks, I would say you don't need to book your tours so quickly, but for Yellowstone, that isn't true. You probably should look into it at least, again, 5 months before you plan on visiting. This is going to ensure that you are much more likely to get accommodations that are near the park and you don't have to stay too far outside of it. My second tip would be to just embrace the fact that there will be a lot of people there with you. Over 4.5 million people visited Yellowstone last year in 2023. It does take some effort to find some of the quieter, off the beaten path spots. And if you are going to the highlights, which of course you need to while you're there, like Old Faithful or the Grand Prismatic Spring, then there just are going to be a lot of people and you kind of have to just go with the flow. You can get around some of this by visiting in months like May or September where there are fewer crowds. And entering in early in the morning can kind of help with that as well. Number 3 is knowing which parts of the park offer which activities you want to see. Because it is such a big park, it can feel really overwhelming figuring out which spots you need to be in order to see the main attractions or ones that are specific to your itinerary. Each offers something a little bit different. Heading up north to Mammoth Hot Springs is going to be an entirely different experience than checking out Lake Yellowstone. This is why it's a good idea to familiarize yourself with a map of Yellowstone so you know which places you need to go in order to see the things you want to see. This is my personal tip and others might disagree, but I think it's a good idea to take at least one day to explore outside the park. Not only does it give you a break from the crowds, but also there's just a lot of cool things to see in the greater Yellowstone region. Bridger-Teton National Forest offers a lot of the same scenery and outdoors experience that you're going to get in Yellowstone, but without as many people. There are also a number of ghost towns nearby, Nevada City and Virginia City, that are worth checking out. And you can get a gorgeous drive along the Beartooth Highway, which I highly recommend. Another tip I am mentioning is make sure to check out the guided ranger programs in Yellowstone. After visiting a bunch of national parks, I really think that this park has some of the best when it comes to guided ranger programs. The cool thing about Yellowstone is that it has so much to offer, such as the geology, stargazing, wildlife, that it's good to get some information from the experts who can tell you a lot more about it than just visiting on your own. The Yellowstone National Park website is the best place to look for information on this, as well as times that they run and which topics they're covering. Another thing is to know Old Faithful's schedule before you head to that area of the park. It's not as faithful as you would believe. In fact, other geysers in the park are a lot more steady when it comes to their schedule. The Yellowstone National Park website does have a timetable where they will let you know when they are guessing Old Faithful will erupt, but I recommend being there at least 10 minutes, probably more like 20 if you have a specific time that you want to see. Of course, you can always just hang around the Old Faithful area for a while until you catch the next one too, but that could be up to almost 2 hours depending, so just keeping that in mind. The final tip I'm going to share with you is to be prepared for weather changes in Yellowstone. You can experience winter in the morning and summer in the afternoon in this area. You never know what you're gonna get. Pack Packing the right items with you, including sun protection and extra layers, can help when dealing with these storms. And also looking ahead at the forecast to know what to expect for that day can help as well. Another thing I will mention is lightning storms can happen in the summer. So knowing how to keep you safe during one of these is also a good idea. I've got a few more tips that I would love to share with you in the blog post that I have linked to below. If you have any questions whatsoever about visiting Yellowstone, feel free to drop them in the comments. And I highly recommend that you hit that subscribe button and the bell notification to get more information on Yellowstone and other national parks.